Welcome to the Open Concept Podcast. This is a very special weekend episode, family day long weekend if you're here in Canada. Special shout out to you and your families. Imagine being told that everything you believed in about your craft, everything that you had been passed down, everything that had been passed down through generations was fundamentally flawed. It's exactly what Bruce Lee did to the martial arts world in the 1960s and early 70s. But this isn't just a story about martial arts. It's a masterclass in disruption, in having the courage to challenge established systems, and in standing firm when the entire world seems to be pushing against you. Picture this: Hong Kong, 1958. A young Bruce Lee is already making waves, combining Wing Chun techniques with boxing movements he'd learned in the streets. If you don't know what Wing Chun is, look it up. His teacher, the renowned Ip Man, shout out Ip Man, watched with a mixture of pride and concern as his student begins to question the rigid structures of traditional Kung Fu. And Bruce was already seeing something that others couldn't or wouldn't. See, that martial arts had become too focused on form and tradition and not enough on practical effectiveness. It was in America where Bruce would truly begin his disruption of martial arts. When he arrived in Seattle in 1959, he found a martial arts community steeped in tradition and segregation. Different styles didn't mix. If you were a wrestler, you trained to wrestle wrestlers. Kung Fu guys trained to teach Kung Fu, and they trained to fight other Kung Fu guys. Traditional karate, you fought other traditional karate students. The Chinese didn't teach Japanese martial arts, and the Japanese masters rarely taught non-Asians. And Bruce looked at this and saw not tradition, but limitation. Think about the audacity of what he did next. At 24 years old, he opened his own school in Oakland, California. But here's the real disruption. He accepted students regardless of their race or background, and he taught them what he called Junfang Gung Fu, a modified version of Wing Chun that incorporated elements from boxing, fencing, and other styles that he found to be effective and that he was training himself. The traditional martial arts community was outraged. They saw it as disrespectful and as a betrayal of century-old traditions. True betrayal. True betrayal. Imagine going in and disrupting something when others believed this was centuries old, not just recent, but centuries old traditions. In 1964, the tension reached his breaking point, and the Chinese martial arts community in San Francisco issued Bruce an ultimatum: stop teaching non-Chinese students or face the consequences. Imagine the pressure. Here's a young man trying to make a living in a foreign country, being told by his own community to fall the heck in line, or else. And Bruce's response? He accepted a challenge from Wong Jack Man, a well-known martial arts teacher. The fight that followed in Bruce's Oakland school wasn't just about who was the better fighter. It was about a future of martial arts itself. The battle lasted only a few minutes, but its impact would last decades. Bruce won the fight, but he wasn't satisfied. He'd found himself winded, taking longer than he felt he should have. And in that moment of self-reflection led to perhaps his greatest disruption yet. After that fight, Bruce completely deconstructed his approach to martial arts. He began to strip away what he called, quote unquote, the classical mess. He started weight training, and that was something that traditional martial artists considered like pretty taboo at the time. He studied boxing footwork, fencing techniques, and even dance movements. Bruce Lee was one heck of a dancer, loved to dance. But he was creating something entirely new, something he would call Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist, or the way of interception. But here's what many people don't realize about Bruce during this period. He was facing resistance from every direction. Traditional martial artists called him a heretic, and Hollywood saw him as just another Asian actor for stereotypical roles. Even some of his own students, struggled with his constant evolution. He would develop a technique, teach it, and completely change or abandon it as he found better methods. Right? Try one thing, you really like it, you teach it, you believe in it, you find something better that works, something that is an improvement over what it is that you're teaching, and just strip that whole belief away for something new and something better. Think about the mental fortitude required to stay on this path. Every day he was told he was wrong. Every day he faced criticism from people he respected, yet Bruce had this extraordinary clarity about his mission. He famously said, "Be like water." But he himself was more like a sledgehammer, repeatedly striking at the walls of tradition until they finally began to crack. By 1967, Bruce had established a revolutionary approach to martial arts training. He emphasized adaptability and personal expression over blind adherence to style. He was integrating Western physical training methods with his Eastern philosophy, creating something that had never, ever existed before. The resistance didn't stop there. In fact, it intensified. When he started working in Hollywood, he faced a different kind of fight. Studio executives wanted him to slow down his movements because they looked too, quote unquote, unrealistic. Mostly to Western audiences. Traditional martial artists criticized him for selling out by making movies. But Bruce understood something fundamental about disruption. Sometimes you have to change the game entirely. Through his films, Bruce did more than showcase his physical abilities. He presented his philosophy to the world. Each movie was a demonstration of his belief that martial arts needed to be practical, adaptable, and free from the constraints of style. He was using Hollywood to spread a message that would have taken decades to disseminate through traditional channels. He found media. What's particularly fascinating about Bruce's journey is how he handled the immense pressure. I can only imagine. In private notes that were later discovered, he wrote extensively about the psychological burden of being a disruptor. He knew he was right, but being right doesn't make the resistance any easier to bear. He developed psychological tools to maintain his conviction, writing extensive journals, practicing meditation, and constantly refining his philosophy. In fact, he studied philosophy for most of his life. The price of disruption was high. Bruce faced physical threats, professional ostracism, and constant criticism. But he understood something that every true disruptor must grasp. Real change doesn't come from working within the system. It comes from being willing to break it down and build something better. By the time of his untimely death in 1973, Bruce had fundamentally changed martial arts forever. He created the foundation for what would become modern mixed martial arts. He had broken down racial barriers in martial arts instruction. He had shown that tradition should guide us, but never, ever limit us. But perhaps Bruce's greatest lesson for disruptors wasn't about martial arts at all. It was about the mindset required to change an established system. He showed that true disruption requires more than just a good idea or superior skill. It requires the courage to stand alone, the resilience to face constant criticism, and the vision to see beyond what is to what could be. Today, when we look at any MMA gym where students freely combine techniques from different styles, where people of all backgrounds train together, where practicality is valued over tradition, where we're seeing Bruce Lee's vision realized. He didn't just change martial arts. He showed us how to be disruptors in our own fields. The question for us today is, what systems are we accepting without question? What traditions are we following simply because that's how it's always been done? Bruce Lee's legacy isn't just about martial arts. It's about having the courage to question, the strength to endure, and the vision to create something new. Even when the whole world is telling you you're wrong. Remember, every industry has its own version of traditional martial arts. Every field has its established ways of doing things, its gatekeepers, its resistance to change. Bruce Lee's story reminds us that true disruption isn't just about having a new idea. It's about having the grit to stand by that idea when everything and everyone is pushing against you. That's the real lesson of Bruce Lee's disruption. Sometimes being right isn't enough. You have to be right, resilient, and relentless. Because changing any established system isn't just about the quality of your ideas. It's about your capacity to endure the resistance that inevitably comes with real change. As you drive home today, as you sit at your desk tomorrow, as you look around your industry, I want you to ask yourself, what's your equivalent of Bruce's classical mess? What practices in your field are being preserved simply because that's how we've always done it? Maybe you're that person in your company who sees a better way, but like Bruce, you're facing resistance from every direction. Maybe you're that entrepreneur who knows your industry is ready for change, but the gatekeepers are telling you to wait your turn, to follow the traditional path. Here's what I want you to consider. Are you willing to be wrong 1,000 times in pursuit of being right once? Are you prepared to stand alone, knowing that the respect of your peers might come years after your biggest decisions? Because somewhere in your industry, there's a rule waiting to be broken, a tradition waiting to be challenged, a new path waiting to be carved. The only question is, are you ready to be your industry's Bruce motherfucking Lee? Have a blessed day.